Remember this trailer? This was the very first time all of you were introduced to the world of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. You know, the game first came out March 20th, 2006, and this game was absolutely huge. You know, it landed on PC and Xbox 360, and later the PS3. You know, people were amazed by the open world, the voice acting, and the new graphics for the time. The game let you go almost anywhere, do whatever you wanted, and really lived in the world of Cyrodiil. You guys loved how deep the quests were and how your choices mattered. There were some bugs, sure, and long loading times. Most fans didn't really care. They were just excited to explore such a huge open world. Critics gave it high scores, and it quickly became one of the best RPGs of its time. And over time, Oblivion stayed popular, thanks to mod support and two huge expansions, Knights of the Nine and the Shivering Isles. These added brand new stories and places to explore, keeping the game fresh. Even though some people thought the faces looked odd, or the level scaling made enemies too hard, it didn't hurt the game all that much. You know, Bethesda kept the game alive with patches and updates, and the community helped even more with mods. The game sold over 9 million copies and stayed talked about for years. It helped shape the way open world games are made today, and it's still loved by many different fans. But you know, who would have guessed that almost 2 decades later, this would become this? And you know, on April 22nd, 2025, the Oblivion remake was announced, and the reaction from everyone, including yourself, was probably something like this. And the reaction was well deserved, and honestly quite surprising, at least for me. See, the Oblivion remaster got a lot of attention and praise. You loved the better graphics, new menu design, and the fun, weird moments the game is known for. It reached 4 million players in just 3 days, and it later passed 9 million, making it one of the biggest games of the year. But some players have issues with bugs, crashes, and even some slow performance, and a few felt the combat still felt old. But even with those problems, most fans were happy to be back in Cyrodiil. The surprise launch got people talking about the gaming world, and some games releasing the same week, like Claire Obscure Expedition 33, reportedly suffered major visibility loss, with one dev citing a complete drop in sales around 2 p.m. that day. Others drew Barbenheimer-style comparisons between the two releases. It was actually really funny. However, fast forward to 2025, and the remaster gets shadow dropped out of seemingly nowhere, no build-up, no trailers, just boom, you know, there it is. And people were absolutely ecstatic about it. The updated graphics, smoother menus, and little touches that made it feel new again without losing the soul of the original. You know, fans ate it up, and within days, it had millions of players driving back into Cyrodiil. Sure, there were bugs, crashes, and some folks weren't too into how the combat still felt dated, but overall, most people were just happy to be back. The old school charm was still there, and the community lit up with memes, screenshots, and memories. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to feel like home. And for a lot of fans, it did. Even if it was an era that I completely missed. But you see, I grew up on a different game. In a different era, an era that most of you remember very well. The era of Skyrim. See, the earliest memories I have of this game go all the way back to E3 2011. I remember my jaw hitting the floor, you know, insane lifelike graphics, flying dragons spitting fire, a choir of people singing in a completely made up language just for one game, and this song they're singing, it's about you. I started walking around the land of Nirn actually feeling like somebody. I was the boss, and all of Skyrim was going to know it. I was so hyped for this game coming out, and I wasn't the only one. You know, fan reaction was even crazier. All it took was a few days and everyone and their dog was suddenly an Elder Scrolls fan. You know, Skyrim hit the ground running so unbelievably hard that it sold 3.4 million copies in 48 hours, and it shipped 7 million units within its first week, generating almost $500 million in revenue, along with it setting a new record for most concurrent players on Steam, with over 200 280,000 simultaneous users in the first 24 hours. You know, this made the fastest selling game in Steam's library history at the time, and just to really steal the show, sales continued to climb. They climbed over 20 million copies sold by mid-2013, later reaching 30 million by June 2016, and as of June 2023, Skyrim surpassed 60 million copies sold, putting it among the top 10 best-selling video games that I have memories about. And I remember seeing Alduin for the very first time, tearing apart Helgen. I remember almost shitting a brick seeing a frost spider for the first time. I remember the accomplishment I felt becoming the leader of the College of Winterhold. But more than anything, you know, I remember hearing that same epic tune when a dragon showed up. The same ancient draconic language spoken by only the ancient Nords of Skyrim, and for the first time ever, I wasn't the one challenging the boss. I was the boss. And you know, it felt incredible. This is what a true adventure game was supposed to be like. Writing my own story, facing my own challenges. I was a god among men, and I felt absolutely awesome. And you know, after all my adventures across Skyrim with Serena for reasons we all know the answer to, hearing that its previous title Oblivion was getting a remaster, I really wanted to experience it. You know, this was finally a chance to enjoy an era that I completely missed. I wasn't around for this game. And you know, after booting it up for the first time, I realized that Oblivion sucks. You know, right away, Oblivion's combat threw me for a loop. You see, I'm a mage main, so I expected Skyrim's freedom. Instead, I'm picking from 10 plus rigid classes and clunky systems that made me feel boxed in. Skyrim let me play my way. Oblivion made me pick a lane. And to put the story into a bullet point, at least from what I understood of it all, the quest can be put into these systems: find the heir to the throne, close the gates of Oblivion, recover the Amulet of Kings and dismantle the Mythic Dawn, find allies to defend Bruma, is how I assume it's pronounced, and then fight Maroon's Dagon. You know, the coolest part about all of this was watching Martin fuse with the spirit of Akatosh to fight the Daedric Prince himself. Personally, I was getting bored around step 3. I only really pushed forward towards the end to see the final cutscene. Let me tell you something, man. Actually seeing that final showdown was a huge payoff. But you know, one thing that was bothering me the most was something I just couldn't shake for some reason. You know, maybe it was that everything was so off. The characters, the zoom in, the actual combat, somehow this game still played and felt straight out of 2006, even though this remaster came out 2 decades later. But here's the thing, the biggest reason I just can't connect with this game, for some reason, for me at least, it's just the message it's trying to tell me, right? Take for example Skyrim and a dragon we're all familiar, Parthenax, the friendly dragon that helps you on your quest to actually defeat Alduin. See, all the way back in the Neolithic era, thousands of years ago, Party Snacks over here was actually Alduin's lieutenant. Mass slavery, sacrifices, and the dragon priests were all overseen by him. The Nords weren't not having a really fun time, and they all served the Dova willingly. You know, willing or otherwise, I guess technically. Now, fast forward just a tiny bit, and you can learn that Parthenax, with some assistance, actually helped free the Nords from their oppression, turning on Alduin, and may or may not, it's a heavily debated topic, have taught the Nords their Thu'um. Dominance and control is in the very nature of dragons, but for over 4,500 years, Parthenax over here has been defying his very nature of pure dominance and instead practicing the way of the voice. Even at the end of the game, we see this fondness for control shown as he states, "All Dova will hear my Thu'um, willing or otherwise." Now, all of this is important as Delphine will actually ask you, well, actually demand that you kill Parthenax, with her main point being, quote, he needs to die, he deserves to die, and it falls to you to kill him. Until he's dead, well, I'm sorry, but we would dishonor our oaths as blades if we continued to help you. But not only is her argument absolute shit, Parthenax not only makes her exact same argument only better, but proceeds to disprove her logic in the very next sentence. You know, he states, we were made to dominate. I have overcome my nature only through meditation and long study of the way of the voice. Which is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort? See, all of this was for one dragon you meet on a mountain for a total of 20 minutes. This is the kind of storytelling I was seemingly not finding anywhere in this game. And believe me, I looked. And you know, at the end of the day, all of these issues that I have with Oblivion, they simply exist because I didn't grow up with it. You know, for me, Skyrim was the game that defined an era. The music, the dragons, the freedom, it was lightning in a bottle, right? For others, that moment was Oblivion. And no remake can take away what it meant to you back all the way in 2006. And that's kind of the beauty of the Elder Scrolls as a whole. Each game is somebody's first step into Tamriel, somebody's first adventure, somebody's home. But for me, Skyrim will always be my Elder Scrolls. For you, maybe it's Oblivion. And with the Elder Scrolls 6 on the horizon, I think we're all about to find out what the next era looks like together.